Hi, folks. This is John with Remodeling Wizards of Maryland. Today I'm talking about the preparation required to get a rooftop deck. One of the first things I hear a lot, people say, well, I want the biggest deck I can possibly get on my roof. They sometimes people think they can fill the entire space, their entire roof with a deck. And that's not always true. In fact, most of the time it's not. There's typically a setback, so that, for example, in Baltimore City, your rooftop deck has to set back at least 8 feet from the front edge of your house. And on the sides, if you're in a row house or a townhouse, you have shared walls. Well, you can take up half of those shared walls. Those walls are usually about 8 inches thick. You could take 4 inches of it. So there's things that you need to know about the size before you decide on how big the deck is going to be. The other thing that I look at when we're talking about rooftop decks is, where's the chimney at? Is it an active chimney? Because you don't want your deck to be right next to a chimney where when you're sitting up there, you're just breathing in the fumes. The plumbing vents is another issue. Take a look at where your plumbing vents are. Is there a way to reroute those vents? Skylights, that's a big thing. Where people have skylights, in particular in the older homes, they're usually in the bathrooms. Do you want the deck to cover over top of the skylight, or do you want to eliminate the skylight? The other thing that we run into is, what about electric? Um, One of the things that you need to consider is, how am I going to get up onto the deck? And then we'll get back to the electric part. But how are we going to get up onto the deck? Well, you can cut a hole in the roof and you could put an entry, basically a small, what they call dog house. We've called them dog houses. We call them shark fins, just depending on the shape. But you can basically enter the deck from the upper floor, going upstairs, a hole in the roof, and then a little room where you would go through it and onto the deck. Now, the other way to get onto a deck is to do it from outside the house. So you may want to go and put another deck on the upper level of your home. Let's say it's a second or third floor of the house. You walk out of a bedroom or a hallway onto a new deck, and then you're able to put stairs up onto the rooftop deck. So you have two levels of decks. But where we run into some problems, in particular when we do those two levels of decks, is electricity. What happens is, we have high power wires coming from the street or coming from the alleyway attached to the back side of your house. Those wires need to have head clearance so that they're not dangerous. They need to be raised up above the level, so that there's no chance that somebody's going to get injured or somehow hit one of those wires. So that's something to think about. You may have to move the wires that are entering your house in order to put a deck onto the house. So we need to look at these things that are obstacles, things that need to be cleared out of the way. So that needs to be taken into consideration, not only with the design, but also with the price. The next thing that you should do on a rooftop deck, and we always do this, is rooftop decks are pretty particular things. There's a lot of things that can happen with the rooftop deck. They can actually blow away if they're not anchored properly to the house itself. So what I always recommend is either have an architect or an engineer to look at the drawings, or even prepare the drawings, and then sign off on those drawings before you go ahead and apply for a permit. Now, your contractor could possibly arrange doing all of that. Once you find somebody that you trust to actually build the deck, you can ask them to make sure that an engineer or an architect looks at the drawings. The other thing that's really important, and people don't always think about this, is, what is the condition of your existing deck? If this deck only has not your deck, what is the condition of your existing roof? If you have an existing deck, we're assuming we're going to either take it down or fix it. But what is the condition of your existing roof? Do you need a new roof? Are you going to need a new roof in 5 years? You're going to need a new roof in 10 years. It's really something to consider, because once you put that deck on, it's a lot harder to replace the roof. Now's the time to do it. So I definitely would have the roof inspected. And if it looks like you have any doubts at all about the life of the roof, I would strongly consider to just replace the roof in advance of putting the deck up. One note though, if you are going to get somebody in there to replace the roof and somebody to build the deck, you want to make sure you talk to the roofer and ask the roofer to make a second trip so that after the deck is installed, have that roofer take a look at any bolts or penetrations, anything that's fastened the deck down through the roof, that everything is sealed. So there are a couple tips right now about rooftop decks. The last thing I want to say is that for sure, 100%, just know you need to get a permit to do a rooftop deck. Don't even try to get started without considering getting that permit. And permits you can apply at the county, you can apply at the city, and either the county and the city, they all have their own specifications and application processes. And typically, again, your contractor should be the one who's able to do that for you. Hopefully this helps, and take care, and thank you for listening.